First one I want to talk about, a nose tackle. So this is the first positional archetype that I want to talk about. So this is somewhat of a similar idea to the one tech conversation last year and, maybe even the year prior, depending on if how early you were on that train or not. But, the first positional piece, I want to start on the defensive line, start on the innermost spot, and that is at the nose tackle. Now, I think Deion Walker can play in this role. I think it's more of a moonlighting or a rotational aspect more than a true nose. I think he had a good rookie year. I think he far surpassed my expectations of what he would be as a rookie, especially as a run defender. But I just don't think for Deion Walker, his build is suitable to be a regular nose. And it's not necessarily like a hugely negative thing, but he's very tall. He's very big. I really appreciate how he's kind of reproportioned his body composition and his weight, since being an NFL player. But it's just hard for him to anchor. It's hard for him to win with leverage. He's so much taller than everybody he's going up against. So guys are naturally going to get under him. And then because of how he's built, he's not the type of guy who's going to drop the knee, who's got that lower body bend. JP Acosta, who's been on this show before, always talks about him as being the Iron Giant, which I think is a funny reference, but it's kind of true. He is from a play style standpoint, and I said this on GR this morning, and I'm going to reiterate it now. What I'm about to say, I don't want it to sound negative, because I think when you hear the phrase finesse player, people think that means soft, and that's not what I'm saying. But Deion Walker is more of a finesse player. He is more of a penetrator, win with a quick swim, penetrate, win with a move, not necessarily a beat 'em up ass kicker type of guy. That's what I think you need on the interior of this defense, specifically if you're going to play some odd front stuff. Again, I think Deion Walker can play a little at the nose, especially if you're getting zone stuff. And he showed a good propensity for recognizing down blocks and being able to defeat certain gap scheme runs. Again, he had a good rookie year. I'm not saying he didn't, but get yourself a true nose tackle. The verbiage I keep using is a stone. Get yourself a stone that you can drop in right over the center. Somebody who's used to a beat 'em up type of play style. You need a sandpaper type of guy. And it does not have to be Vita Vea. It doesn't have to be 330 pounds, 350 pounds, some Goliath or some Godzilla, King Kong type of dude. It's more about the play style. It's more about the skill set, right? It can be a smaller nose who's 310, 315 pounds. It doesn't have to be some mammoth type of dude. It's more about the skill set. It's more about the play style. The example that I continue to use here of who I'm looking for in this example, and he happens to be an unrestricted free agent again this year, like he was last year, is Roy Lopez. Roy Lopez was with the Cardinals in 2024. He was a UFA last offseason. I wanted the Bills to bring him in as a one tech. He ended up going to Detroit, played well for Detroit. He is a UFA once again. I think he could be affordable, somebody that you can get for like $3 to $5 million. You plug him in on the interior, get a good rotation, let him eat bodies, eat space, beat up dudes on the inside. I think what's also nice with him is, or not even, that specifically him is Roy Lopez is a guy that I'm targeting. One, because I think he can do the job, but two, unfortunately, as we have to, play this game every offseason with the Bills, I do think he'll be cost effective. It's somebody you don't have to break the bank for, and you can get this type of role. Again, he's a plugger inside. He's tough to displace. He's able to reduce the surface area and or hold his ground with lean and leverage. He's got good block recognition across multiple schemes, but he's also got enough burst and juice to be effective upfield. He can drive guys into the backfield. He can penetrate a little bit. And overall, he's just a guy who's going to occupy blockers and disrupt flow. Again, a sandpaper type of guy, a grit, a guy that's just a pain in the butt to play against. And I think he'll be cost effective. But say you don't like Roy Lopez, fine. That is the type of archetype they need at nose to put in rotation with Walker, which one, I think helps Walker from having to deal with all the beat 'em up type of stuff on the inside. And I also think that frees up Deion Walker to do kind of a little bit of everything across the defensive front, a la, what he did at Kentucky. You could put him at nose. Maybe you could put him in a 1, you could put him in a 2 or a 2I, you could put him in a 3, you could put him in a 4, you could put him in a 4I on the inside shoulder of a tackle, you could put him in a 5, maybe even kick him out a little wider. I think if you get that rotational nose, it frees up Deion Walker to kind of be a little more of the unicorn that he potentially is because of his size and the athleticism that he has. Again, he's a huge mountain of a dude. I thought he played admirably as a one tech for the Bills in his rookie year, especially because that's not really what he was at Kentucky. But I don't think that, putting him as a true nose or having him be that plugger on the inside or that type of role, again, they're not going to ask him to be a plugger. They're still going to have him penetrate and kind of win in that way. But I do think you need more of a displacement mitigator on the interior, somebody who won't get turned, somebody who won't get moved. And I just think that's a hard ask of him down in and down out because of his build. The build that allows him to be kind of that unicorn player is also the same type of build that limits him in certain ways and allows him to not anchor at times and will cause him to get displaced, horizontally or kind of get driven back a little bit as guys get underneath him, guys get torque, guys have leverage, kind of those pieces. Oh, we got to stop. Jason, you are awesome. Here again, and throwing out super chats again. Appreciate the hell out of you, Jason. Jason says, man, it's going to be nice to see our linebackers involved more in our pressures. The secondary is really going to have to step up as a result. Who would you like us to target at free safety? I don't know if Rapp is that guy. I am going to put a pin in this because safety is one of the archetypes we're going to talk about in this episode. And I will specifically be talking about more of the quote unquote free safety type of position or a deep safety type of role. So once again, it's like you peeked into my notes and I see where you're at and I appreciate you. I'm going to take a sip of ginger ale because the caffeine helps with my headache a little bit. So hold. Okay. Now, also see this question here from Mally who says, how do you feel about TJ Sanders? He's going to be in the next archetype conversation. So it's like you're peeking into my notes too. You kind of know where this is going. And Roy says John Franklin Myers as a nose tackle. John Franklin Myers, I hate to keep saying this, he's going to be in the next segment for another archetype that we're going to talk about. But yes, he has some versatility, which is part of what we're going to talk about in the next one. So I like this. Everybody's kind of getting there. So again, there are pieces already on the roster that are present that can work in Jim Leonhard's defense. And I should say that too, with all these positional archetypes that they're going to need to add or change or whatever, however you want to verbalize it. It's not because the current players aren't a fit. It's not because they don't have the guys or the body types or the play styles or the skill sets to run Jim Leonhard's defense. That's not what's happening. They have some guys that can fit already. They just need more of some supplemental guys or auxiliary guys for specific roles with specific play styles or skill sets mixed in to kind of bring everything together holistically and maintain the versatility and the hybridized nature of everything. Oh, I see that comment that just came in from Pumpkin and the Goose. Thank you very much. I appreciate you checking out my segment on GR. I'm glad you liked it. Thank you very much for the feedback. I appreciate that. I don't want to bring the comment up because I feel like it's too pat myself on the back, especially because I'm by myself. It's like, oh, look at this nice comment someone said about me, but I wanted to acknowledge it. So thank you. So yeah, again, this is a scheme that I think, and specifically for Leonhard, Jim Leonhard is the type of coach who does a great job setting his players up for success mentally and schematically. He's the type of guy who wants to give you the tools to succeed. Oh, you're right, Jared. Ginger ale is caffeine free, but maybe it was a placebo effect because my headache's been feeling better since I drank the ginger ale. Good call, Jared. I'm a fool. I literally looked at the can and it says caffeine free. Man, I'm a dunce. I am not thinking great, but my headache's kind of going away. So I'm going to act like it has caffeine in it. So we're going to ignore this comment and we're all going to pretend like this ginger ale that I'm drinking has caffeine in it. Man, I'm an idiot. Yeah. So the style of Jim Leonhard, again, we've talked a lot about the schematic benefits and we'll continue to talk about as we go forward, throughout this offseason, but he's a guy who knows how to maximize what he has with his players physically and mentally. Again, schematically, what do you do best physically? What type of player are you? What type of play style do you work best in? Cool. We know how to weaponize you and how to wield you, but he also does a good job building them up mentally, giving them the tools to succeed on game day. The capacity versus capability thing that Sean McVay talks about. Capability is, you can give someone an assignment and they can go and execute it. Capacity is the ability to build on that and kind of think for yourself and be able to operate in the moment for something you maybe haven't been trained on or, given the keys to before already in practice. Jim Leonhard has talked about in his coaching clinics and different pieces, the idea of you can expose players to the multitude of scenarios they're going to face in games, but on game day, you're outside those white lines. So you have to count on guys to step up and make plays in positive ways. You have to give players room to grow and room to think. So he's not going to, the example, it's funny because he's, got some Rex Ryan in him in terms of that tree and stylized play. But I think so many fans are still gun shy from Rex Ryan coming in and taking over that cold front defense that was such a good 4-down type of defense. And everybody was like, oh, well, surely he'll keep Jim Schwartz. Okay, he didn't keep Jim Schwartz. Schwartz is gone. It's like, okay, well, surely he'll still kind of tap into what they did under Schwartz. And it was like, nope, he's going to take a bunch of round pegs and try and fit them into square holes, and everything's going to go sideways. Jim Leonhard is not that guy. He's not going to take a bunch of players and try to make them bend to his scheme. He's going to play what is best for this team. And, this year, it might be more 4-down structure stuff. It might be things that the guys on the roster are already comfortable with. Maybe they don't feel like they're able to bring in the right bodies from a financial situation or a draft situation where they can run the full gamut of what Leonard wants to run, right? So maybe, I don't want to say he waters it down, but maybe he kind of narrows down the menu a little bit to play to the players that he has and the personnel that he has and kind of what he can get to in the best way. I trust Jim Leonhard, holistically, to be able to put the guys in the right place to set them up for success. Again, this is another kind of quote tied to him. What can you effectively get your guys to do on a consistent basis? Anything more than that is a waste, and you're not really doing your players justice as far as what you're trying to get accomplished. If you're not doing that, you're not putting the game in their hands to let them win for you. He is not going to put guys in disadvantageous positions for them or for the team or for himself. So I do think he will adapt things around the players. But again, the current players that they do have under contract and on the roster, because they've got a bunch of guys that are on the books financially but aren't on the roster anymore, they do have some guys still on the roster that can fit what he wants to do. But again, you need to supplement that or buttress that with some of these archetype pieces that we're talking about in this episode. And again, it starts with nose tackle, right? So get yourself a true stone that you can drop in the center of your defensive line, can play a true nose, play a zero, head up right on the center, or can play a one tech, or just be able to be available inside if you want to go heavy with some other dudes. Like, you just need that type of skill set. Again, I thought they needed more of that skill set last year as a one tech. I sat here and I pounded the table for Roy Lopez last year. I am pounding the table for Roy Lopez again. He continues to be my example, one, because he fits the play style and the skill set that I think they need there, but also, again, I think he will be cost effective, and not cost effective in like a bad way, but cost effective in a good way. Those type of dudes are available on the market to some degree. They don't cost a ton. And I think he'll fit right in that rotational role, right on the interior. Get yourself a stone, drop him in there. There's a possibility you could get this in the draft as well. I know a lot of people like Big Citrus, Dominique Orange out of Iowa State. I've watched him a little bit. That could be fun. I know people like Corleone, the defensive tackle from Cincinnati. You got Lee Hunter, defensive tackle from Texas Tech. So, there are options in the draft. If you want like some heavy hitters on the interior in the draft, there are options there. And there's some options in free agency too, but I kind of just go for that known quantity. Roy Lopez, I think you can get him on a 1 year, $3.5 to $5 million deal. Maybe you go 2 years, but you bring him in, let him kind of eat those ugly down reps, those ugly down snaps, in rotation with Deion Walker, which helps unlock Deion Walker, keep him fresh to do some more of those fun type of unicorn things that he can do with his size and skill set and what he kind of is. Gage says, I'd love them to draft a nose tackle late and sign one out of free agency. How many nose tackles compete for a roster spot? That's what's tough, right? Because I think you're going to play Walker at nose. I think you could play him in multiple spots on the front. He's a weird one for a fit in that type of defense, right? Like, you kind of play him in a 4-eye, you kind of play him in a nose. I think if you're getting multiple nose tackles, that to me would indicate that you're going to play Walker in more of a 4-eye and kind of some of the interior stuff in your 4-down looks. I would expect one true nose to make the roster here and be in rotation with Deion Walker. But if they go with multiple, that to me would signal they're going to rock with multiple and then use Deion Walker in some kind of other way on the defensive line. That's a good question. Oh, I appreciate you. Russ is here. Russ says, I'm not listening to the podcast because I'm watching old school wrestling and listening to old tunes. That said, watch Michigan State center Matt Goldman. He's awesome, but not like the Miz. I appreciate all the references here. And Russ, I appreciate you. And I'm sorry you have to watch Michigan State football. That sounds rough. Gage says, isn't Walker too tall? Yeah, but that's not gonna really kinda stop anywhere, or stop being a problem anywhere on that defensive line. Like, anytime he gets guys under him, it's gonna be a problem, and that's not just gonna happen, like, oh, on the interior, kinda on the outside, like, it's gonna happen to him regardless. Dude is 6'7". He's too tall in a good and bad way everywhere, unless he's going up against certain offensive tackles, but that's not gonna happen regularly for him. So anytime he lines up on the interior, he's gonna have, the opportunity in a bad way for dudes to get under him and kinda drive him and move him and do all that. That's just you dance with who brought you, and that's who brought you. He's going to get out leveraged a bunch because of how tall he is, which is part of why I don't want him to have to constantly deal with that at nose, where guys can get under him a little bit, or where he has to, how much does he have to two gap? How much is he single gap? And are they playing a gap and a half? What are they kind of doing on that interior? How do they kind of play it? Are they playing it, like an odd front structure where it is more gap and a half or two gapping, or are they playing it more, hey, five down, everybody's still one gap and we're getting upfield and attacking? We'll see kind of how they go from there. Oh, I got to stop again. Jason, appreciate you. You're extremely generous. Jason, another super chat. And Jason says, so Ant, are you saying that Jim Leonhard will have a number of packages, player specific, to fit in the players we have, or until players become more comfortable with the transition? Yeah, I think he will have sub packages and defensive plays, and more so calls that are a fit to what the guys they currently have are, right? Like, so for instance, right, and as I talked about at Wisconsin, we'll just use this kind of example, right? When he would go nickel, it was a 2-4-5. So you had two down linemen, four linebackers, and then your five defensive backs, right? And then what we talked about on your front, it would be four down, but the guys on the interior were defensive ends. The guys on the outside were linebackers, right? And the type of guys that they would use, Zach Bond, Andrew Van Ginkel, right? Those are the type of guys he would wield in base, but also in nickel. The Bills don't have guys like Zach Bond. The Bills don't have guys like Andrew Van Ginkel. So can you still run that kind of stuff when you don't have those body types? Potentially, right? And maybe, hey, maybe Dorian Williams can do some of that stuff. I don't think he's the pass rusher off the edge that either of those guys were at Wisconsin, but you look at that and it's like, okay, do we have some of those guys who can fill those roles? Do we have a guy who's similar to Wisconsin Zach Bond, or Wisconsin Andrew Van Ginkel, to kind of use that example, or, Wisconsin Jack Sample, or Wisconsin Nick Herbig, like, right, those type of dudes? And if you don't, then you have to sit and look and go, okay, can we still play that way? Can we still run those types of packages, those type of plays, those type of calls? And that's the question that you ask. And then I trust him to evaluate, you know what? We still can run that type of stuff with the guys we have. Or I trust him to be like, we can't do that. So when we go nickel, it's going to be a true four down front. We're not going to do two defensive ends on the interior and two outside linebackers on the outside. It's going to be more of, Greg Rousseau to Ed Oliver to Deion Walker to Michael Hoyt or something like that. So yeah, I trust him to kind of set those guys up for success and kind of build it around. He has his identity, he has his philosophy, and he has the scheme that he wants to implement, but he's going to build that around the players that he has, or look for guys to bring in to fit what he wants. He's not going to set anybody up for failure or set anyone up to be in a disadvantageous spot. Good comment. Good question. Russ says, Ant, I'm not sure if you watch Texas A&M Cassius Howell, but he'd be fun off the edge for Leonard. His game against LSU was awesome. He's actually one of the first edges I have earmarked. Him and your boy David Bailey. Just kidding. I know you're not a huge fan of David Bailey. Plant the flag on that early, as we were texting about that earlier today. I have Cassius Howell kind of pegged to kind of watch him early, mainly because I saw somebody who I respect put him in a mock to the Bills like a month ago, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. No, but I'm behind on prospect watching at this time of year. I will be middle of February. I will be grinding extremely hard. But no, I have not started the edge grouping yet, but I'm going to make a note of Howell. I already had a note on Howell, and I'm going to make it even more of one now because I respect you and know how much you know. Jason, another super chat. Thank you. Jason says, what do you think is the most important role that must be filled or addressed in Leonard's scheme? Oh, sheesh. Man, if he wants to do what he did at Wisconsin, it's the linebackers. If he wants to do more of what they did in Denver, I think it's nose tackle and defensive end. And I'm going to talk about defensive end more in a minute now. Very good question. Very good question. Yeah, so that's nose tackle. Kind of Gage says everything but strong safety and corner. But yeah, so in a nutshell, that's who Leonard is. That's what I want with this nose tackle spot. I know this is a mix of a segment talking about the positional archetype and nose in specific, but also just kind of what Leonard is, who he is.